Welcome to the Rebel Rise podcast, a place where badass women like you come to connect, learn, and grow. Here, we celebrate the relentless spirit of women who dare to dream and design their own destinies. This is your time for no bullshit, so no subject is off limits. This is a time for you to collect inspiration and create the vision for your life. Get ready to break free from societal expectations, take your power back, and step into your dream life. Your empowerment journey begins right here. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Rebel Rise podcast. I am really excited for our guest that we have today. It is the first time on Rebel Rise that we have had a gentleman join us for his perspective. And I am so excited to break the mold today and bring him on because he is somebody that is so in alignment with everything that we talk about here on the podcast. And he is all about empowerment, spreading love and joy, and literally everything in between. So I'm excited to bring him on. He refers to himself as a man on a mission to impact 1 billion. So I am so excited to get into that. And I want to just start by saying welcome, Tavian.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and I just want to dive into it since we used it for your intro is being on a mission to impact 1 billion. What is that all about? What do you stand for? And how are you on that journey now?
Yeah, 100%. So, the term man on a mission to impact 1 billion, I'll never forget that when I started my road towards entrepreneurship, before I even got into business, one of the biggest things, I was posting a lot on content about was finding your purpose, following your passions, things of that nature. And I don't know what it was, but there was somebody who just messaged me. And I remember in a bio, I forgot which app I was on for this, but in my bio, I think I just put I'm a man on a mission to impact a lot of lives or something basic. And then somebody, DM me and said, what sounds really good? Man on a mission to impact 1 billion. I'm like, that has a nice ring to it. So
Yeah.
that kind of happened. That's kind of stuck with me since 2021. And since then, I've kind of dabbled into it, kind of dabbled out of it. But since I've been working a lot more on my personal brand and what it is that I really want to do, which is a lot of, yes, self-empowerment, but also in the end of the day, it's like day by day, I always like to envision that, everybody is always trying to find that one thing or even those things that fulfills them the most to bring the most out of life. And, coming from a person who used to be I guess you could say even closed-minded, I can have all these things, being happy, being joy, having peace, things of that nature. And at first thinking it was a fairy tale, but then once I continue to grow my network, my community, and be around the right people, especially working on mindset, you realize how possible that can be to turn anything you want into a reality. So day by day, it hurt me hearing people saying like, "Oh, that'd be nice," or "Oh, only in my dreams," and it makes me think to myself now, but that the reason they're saying that is not so much as it's because that's what they actually believe, but somebody made that believe them about themselves, whether it's it could be somebody like family or or friend, social media, coworkers, but in the end of the day, my main goal is, how can we turn this world to be like the biggest light of love, laughter, and joy, but most importantly, fulfillment towards one another's purpose and what it is that we set out to do that brings us that joy.
Yeah, so good. And fulfillment of purpose, like that. See, that's why, and for everyone listening, we actually just met a couple of weeks ago at a local networking group, but that is why we identified as twins, right? Just in different bodies. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fulfillment and the finding of purpose. And so, can you expand on that a little bit and how you help people to find that in themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, more of the recent content that I've been posting would be your typical, like, hey, here are 3 steps to block out the haters, or 3 steps to, switch your mindset from a, losing mindset to winning mindset. But so I've been gearing a lot more content towards that. So a lot more on the self-development side of one another. But when it comes out to helping people really find their passion, find their purpose, the thing about it is I always say is, you can't necessarily like sit somebody, I guess in a sense you can, but you can't necessarily sit somebody down and then try to force them to say what they like. Like it's easy for us to say what it is, we like to do. There's tons of things I like to do, but what brings me the most joy and fulfillment in the end of the day? So my mission and my goal is, especially when I relay my content, when I relay my messages, when I relay, my conversations, is it's not necessarily I want you to be able to take away what I'm telling you. I want you to be able to take away the pieces that speaks to you the most, right? What feels like it's going to bring you the most alignment within yourself. Because at the end of the day, we all have different ideas of what joy and happiness looks like. I mean, for example, entrepreneurship brings a lot, there's people who find joy in it, there's people who don't. But and so my mission really, my goal really is for my content to speak through people and allow that vulnerability within themselves, not necessarily like having to like tell them what it is or pry it out of them, but it's giving them the opportunity to see that, hey, I am just as human as you are. There is nothing special about me. There is nothing different about me, right? I'm like, God doesn't have favorites over here. So it's like the thing about it is it's just understanding how do you get one into that vulnerable state of mind to where they're willing to look at not only what may be the quote unquote ugly, I guess people could say, but also the great things and aspects about them. So again, I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of us coming together and really reinforcing one another of the passion, the purpose that we have within ourselves that we can exert out to the world. So that's really my goal behind that, and that's really what I really aim my content to do, is to have those people who are sitting day by day thinking about all these things they envision themselves doing, but not doing it. And my goal is to break that barrier to where they see the possible path for them to do that.
Yes, I love that. So, so good. And what I find too with my work and helping women to find fulfillment too is that some of them are like that, right? Where they sit around and they do fantasize and they know exactly what they want. They're just too scared to jump. They're too scared to
Exactly.
act on it for various reasons. But what I find too is that some of them are so stuck inside their own heads or stuck worrying about what everybody else has expected of them, like exterior, that they're not even sure what they want. It's almost like they forget what their own values are. Maybe they've never created them. And I find that the fulfillment piece is really attached to values. So do you run into that a lot, or do you feel like the people you mostly encounter are people who already kind of know what they want and it's just a fantasy at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. The thing about it is, in the end of the day, I truly believe everybody knows what they want. And when they're by themselves, whether it's writing it down on a piece of paper, whether it's, a note or just a mental thought, I truly believe that day by day, we do think about these things that we want for ourselves. And I say this and I speak this because of my own personal experience.
Mm.
And the thing about it was, I know from my personal experience, I would always think about, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to necessarily work a job my whole life, right? Which I always like to say is just the case. I don't have anything against jobs. And actually, even the thing I've said for I don't know how long, I don't have, I'm not against jobs, but what I am against is people doing something that doesn't fulfill them and thinking that's the only route to life and quote unquote success. And that can
Yes.
go the same way for business too. People who feel like they have to start a business, but it's like if you get fulfillment from being a marketer, right, or whatever it may be, do that. But yeah, a lot of it really just comes down from within. It comes from personal experience. But I do believe that many people know what they want for themselves. However, a lot of people may say, well, I don't know how to get there. And I think a lot of people typically, the moment they hit that mindset block of, I don't know what that next step is, or I don't know where I should go from here, then they kind of like cut it off and they kind of look for those things that, what, is comfortable for them. And that's why, being comfortable is very, I'm not gonna say very toxic, but you got to be cautious about being comfortable, because when you're comfortable, it's the thought process of you don't want to move from where you're at. You quote unquote like where you're at. But what I always find ironic is there's people who are going day by day. They don't like where they're at, but they create this false reality for themselves of thinking that this is the best that it's going to get. So they're just going to make the most out of it. So that's honestly how I kind of view that as well. So one of my biggest pieces of advice I give to people in terms of, how do you get started on that thing that's on your mind? It's keeping you up at night. You probably dream about it at school, at your job. It could be at a social event. Is really the power of why. And it's crazy because I had a conversation about this last weekend with a group of friends who were also kind of like talking about the same thing. Like, man, I don't know where to go from here. And again, speaking from personal experience, the more I start to ask myself the question, why, I start to dig into the root of the answer or the block that's preventing me from progressing. So just a brief example, if somebody were to say, I want to start a business, or I want to get into this career, but I just don't know, if it's for me. The question then is going to be is, well, why don't you think it's for you? So that again, this is where the state of being vulnerable is so important for that person. It doesn't mean you have to share with the world, but I think what people need to be okay with and learn is being vulnerable with yourself and being open to yourself is the best way you're going to be able to progress and get out of the state of mind that's keeping you from where you want to be. So going back to the example I was giving is when you ask that question, why, and you dig into like, okay, well, why do I think I can't do this? Well, I don't think I can do this because, my family says this, my coworker says this, they're smarter than me, they're brighter than me, this. Okay, next question. Why do you think that they are smarter than you, brighter than you? And then the answer could be something so irrelevant from what it is that they want to do. So they could say something about, well, they were always a good, you could say straightforward, good child growing up, or they follow the rules, or they just seem like they know better. But what's so ironic and interesting is we all live and have different viewpoints of, again, what success is, what failure is, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. So even though it may appear that, oh, they got it made, they got it going on, they're living their best life, it doesn't necessarily mean not only are they living the right path, but the thing about it is your life, like your life, my life, everybody else's life is all different. I actually said this as well last weekend. We all share a similar story, but we're all on a different path. So I think once people can start actually signifying and even stepping into that mental mindset of that aspect, and you start to be more vulnerable with yourself, ask yourself those questions of why, which, by the way, I say ask yourself why about 5 to 10 times. You find those answers in the root of it, and then now you know where to start.
Yes. Yeah. And what I want to highlight about that is, what you just said for everybody listening. First of all, go back and listen to what he just said because it was so good and so powerful, so spot on. I actually have a root framework in my coaching program that I teach to get them in there. But what's important about what you said, Tavian, is you have to be curious and you've got to ask yourself because that is where maybe you haven't gone there. And I want to highlight that because I was that person who I thought I knew what I wanted and I was actually asked not even that long ago, maybe within the last year, what do you want? And I didn't know the answer to the question. I was like, I have no idea. And it was like
Mm.
something that I just pushed to the back burner and I just stopped thinking about because I let life get in the way. I let my achievements and my goals and everything like that get in the way. And then all of a sudden I realized I didn't even know what I was working for. I
Yeah.
realized that I was miserable in that moment doing what I was doing because I was actually living for somebody else and not living for myself. So the piece to highlight is getting curious, like asking yourself those questions. And yes, asking why. Like, what did you say, 8 to 10 times?
Yeah, well, I'll say 5 to 10 times, but honestly, the
Five
more
to
you
10.
ask yourself, the deeper and the better it really does get. Because the
Mm-hmm.
trick behind this is, and I wish I could like draw a diagram, but let's just pretend we have like an upside down triangle, right? So you know how it kind of like starts like this, but obviously the more it goes
Yeah.
down, you see how it's getting closer and closer. You realize that once you get to the root of that answer, you realize that that answer that is the root cause of it all that's where you know you need to start. And typically, when you start there, whether it is if it's a past trauma, for example, to confront that if you're able to, right? And the moment you confront that, what that does now, especially on the mental side, is now you feel like you've not only have you taken the first step for yourself, but now your viewpoint on all these other problems of why you felt like you couldn't do what you could do becomes a lot smaller as well. And most times they also decimate themselves because and it creates a clearer road for you to be able to have this unlimited, potential and an acknowledgement about yourself of what you can do. So I would like to say yes, like 5 to 10 times, but if you keep finding answers, I say keep going because once you get to the root of it, now you know where to start. And once you know where to start, and you can go back up and conquer and overcome each layer, then I mean at that point, I mean you're basically unstoppable towards everything you want to do.
Yeah. And it can get wild when you're asking yourself these questions. I mean, sometimes you go down a pathway you never thought,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, weird. That's actually why I want to do this thing. Like I just thought I liked it. But there's
Gotcha.
always a deeper reason. So definitely so powerful. Now, next thing I want to ask you about is a little birdie told me we have a mutual friend, and she said that you guys or you used to, and maybe you still do. So let me know if you do. You're just really great at motivating others and making others feel included. She said you used to send motivational texts every morning to your group of friends, and
Yeah.
you're always so gracious about inviting people to go out and do things with you and to hike with you. And I imagine that's all a part of this initiative. But I'm curious, like, where does that piece of you come from?
That's a really great question. And to give a little bit of backstory, when I say a little bit, I do mean a little, not gonna be like a 10-minute backstory. But the thing about it is who I am today is not who I was even, I would even say 2.5, 3 years ago. I mean that wholeheartedly. That's not just saying it just to say it. I was someone who was completely shy, crazy anxiety, social anxiety, always thought negative in the sense of like this won't happen, oh, I can't win. Like, so what's so interesting, and I think about that all the time, I'm like, what was that switch for me? Now, don't get me wrong, I did move here and I'm coming up on my 2 years this May of living here in Arizona. Part of that was me moving. And I will say that for those out there, whether it is a location or an environmental piece that may be blocking you, I would say, put yourself, surround yourself around, yes, a great group of people, but where an area where you can also feel like you can thrive. Because I understood that I wanted more and I wanted to do more, but I knew where I was living at the time wasn't really the area to do it. I knew I had to make a change. So it's interesting. A lot of times I typically like, would pray for it. And I'll never forget that back in high school, which is probably one of the most darkest times of my life. Back in high school, I remember I would always pray. I said, like, I pray for, to be around people who think like me, people who are on similar paths as me, things of that nature. And it's crazy how I think back. I'm like, man, how that brought me where I am today, even though, it's like what, maybe 8, 9 years ago, if my math is right. But the point being is, from where I was then to now, it took a lot of, personal development. But I think what really got me started was it's just day by day by day, when you're going through the same motion and it's something that doesn't fulfill you and you're not pleased with it, eventually you just get tired of it. And I do believe that a lot of people are tired of it, but I think what the difference was is I started to open my mind up more to the possibilities. And how I opened my mind to more of the possibilities was starting to, one, do the things that other people weren't doing that were also in the same boat that I was back then. So in other terms, if I knew I was surrounded by people who were unfulfilled with themselves, well, if I do the same actions, think the same way, spend my time doing the same thing that they do, I'm just going to be doing the same thing and feeling the same way every single time. However, if I start to, put myself first, if I start to explore more upon what are the capabilities, what is out there, so on and so forth, then I can actually start working internally as I know that's going to work through me externally. So I think that's where it really started is when I really got deep into, how does the mindset work? And then understanding, how can I go from point A to point B? But then, yeah, so fast forwarding now, yeah, and I do have I actually have a group, I have a channel on Instagram actually where I actually am getting back, I have gotten back and sent out like motivational reminders like daily or whatnot. So I do have that, so I do send those out. But yes, I would it's weird because whoever was just on my mind, I just sent a message out to them. And it wouldn't be like a copy and paste because I remember I would send it out to maybe anywhere from like 5 to 7 people, either per week or a day at one point. But each of them were customized because I just simply took the time to think, process, kind of like listen to the heart, as corny as cliche that may sound. But I just kind of took the time to listen. I just sent what felt right. And then the feedback would always be amazing. So just simply doing that has encouraged and grown, me from being nervous to being more confident. The more I went out, the more I actually spoke to people, the more I started inviting people to like things like group hikes and things of that nature. Social anxiety was no more. So I think that's just really what it was. It's the small steps, or whatever that may be for somebody. A small step for somebody of wanting to be more confident could simply be you wanting to have a conversation with somebody, but you're practicing in front of the mirror first before you present the idea. That could be a first
Yeah.
step. But yeah, that's really where it started for me. I sent out messages to my friends, yes, group hikes, and all that. And yeah, like I said, I'm getting back. I actually have gotten back into sending out daily motivational reminders, and I just typically speak from the heart. I typically speak from the mind, and I just kind of let it flow from there.
Yeah. And can we just talk about how powerful that is, not only for you in a way of starting to build up your confidence, but how much that does for the person on the receiving end to just receive a random heartfelt text from somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's interesting too is the reason I did that, and this is where, and I would say I've gotten a lot better at this. I remember so back then I used to be one of the most selfless type of people you have ever met. So like putting everybody in front of me, putting everybody in their thoughts and opinions above mine, which is why, it spiraled down really for me and it wasn't as healthy. So I used to always hear this word selfish and thinking like, oh, it's such a negative term. But then you realize as you go through those motions, you do have to be selfish for yourself at a lot of times, really. So yeah, I mean, so my thing for me was, whether it was back then or whatever time frame it may be, I simply thought because I knew I felt the way how I felt, which was it could have been again unfulfilled or I'm going through the motions, I just don't know what to do right now. Because I understand, and it kind of goes back to the first saying or first statement I made in the beginning of how we really all are on, we're on, similar paths, just a different story. I knew that, well, what would help me out right now? Sending these text messages, always a great thing. And because it's interesting enough, we always think that day by day, everybody's doing fine, or actually, we think that everybody's doing great. But deep down, there's so much people are carrying on within themselves. So I sent those messages out because it's just like, man, this is what I know somebody I would want, someone to do for
Yeah.
me. And I'm going to, do it for them. I want to do it towards them. I want to do it for them as well. So I would say that's really kind of where that all started in terms of like why I started doing that and even why now I still do that in my channel on Instagram and even the content that I'm creating as well.
Yeah. I'm going to make this a call to action right now. I
Sure.
feel like I know we're supposed to do it at the end, but I'm going to do it now because that was, yeah, because we're going to use this. So we'll of course talk about how, all the other things and how they can get in touch with you. But my challenge to everybody listening is how can you reach out to somebody and impact them this week? How can you reach out to somebody, or not how can you reach out to somebody who you think is okay? Reach out to somebody who you think is absolutely crushing it because I promise you that they need to hear from you. They need to hear like, hey, I really look up to you. Hey, you're crushing it. Hey, keep going. Like as somebody who's super busy and my friends always think I'm absolutely crushing it. And there are some days where I feel so fucking lonely.
Right.
And right. And so it would just impact me so much. Watch now I'm going to get a bunch of texts when they listen to this. But I want everybody listening to take this as a very serious challenge and reach out to somebody that you haven't reached out to, maybe somebody who's been on your mind, no matter how well you think they're doing, and impact them. And when you do it, I want you to share it and tag the both of us so that we can celebrate you helping to impact others as well. Because that there's people that aren't okay that we of course need to check on, but the people who you think are okay could also use the same amount of love. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful, especially to encourage others to do that. Because again, I think that even goes back to why, I'm on my mission to do what I do is to not only for themselves, but how can you support back in other people? And I think that's great. And you know what, even as you were saying that, because it made me think about it, even in my, my birthday speech I had, which, and, they were like, birthday speech and all this whatnot. Um, I'll never forget. I showed my gratitude is what I did. That was my birthday speech. It wasn't the typical, "Hey, I'm this old now, and life is great, life is good, this, and yeah, it's awesome." I just showed gratitude. I remember what I said was to everybody that was at the table, which it looked like we were recreating the Last Supper, is what it looked like. But
It
at
did.
the table, I remember I was telling everybody that, who I am today, not only who I am today, but everybody who is sitting at this table, whether we are really close or we are not, just know in some way, shape, or form, you have helped me grow as a man. You have brought value into my life. You have been a phenomenal friend. You have encouraged me and motivated me in ways that you cannot comprehend. And for that, I am more than grateful. Not only call you friend, but even family as well. So that's even me, pouring back in to them daily as well. Or, in that moment right there pouring back into them. And I guess you could say, I don't know, maybe some of them felt motivated by that, right? I got a
Yep.
few words of encouragement of how that, how much it meant to them that they heard those words. But even stuff like that, right, can really make somebody's day. Because again, you never know what somebody goes through. We hear it all the time. But I think again, that moment we just express our gratitude upon other people, I think can go like miles and miles, not just for ourselves, but for them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of like what you just said a few minutes ago about, almost feeling like it's kind of selfish, even something like that. And I want to highlight that is also a little selfish, but it's okay. And it's actually good for us because we know what we want. And if selfishly expressing gratitude towards your friends, that's the not selfish piece. But the selfish piece is that it makes me feel good to tell you that you're amazing and that I appreciate you because of the response I get. Right. And so that's okay. Like, and people I feel like shy away so much from the the selfishness of everything. Anything that they feel like is selfish, they won't do.
Yeah.
But there's truly these acts of kindness that are honest and real that are also kind of an act of selfishness. But it's okay. I almost don't like the rap that the word selfish gets,
Yeah.
really, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and even like touching on that as well, and this is interesting. Again, like I said, I went from being somebody who was selfless, thinking that self was just like, the devil of all words, to thinking like, no, you actually
Right.
do have to be selfish. And what's interesting enough is, I mean, I think there's so many variables to why many people have like view, being selfish as a bad thing, right? Is the moment have your own morals, and standards, and you may say no to something, right? You may have been this yes man, yes woman for some time. And the moment you say no about something because you want to put yourself first, you need a mental day. You want to start your business. You want to, learn this new skill, but now it, may be a quote unquote disservice for somebody else. Well, now it's a problem for them. So
Mhm.
this is why not only is it really important and keen to be mindful of like who you're around, but it's also important to know that in the end of the day, I'm gonna say, and I'm trying to see how I'm gonna break this down as well. But in the end of the day, inherently, yes, we are all selfish. There are just those of us who are, we view kindness as not being able to say no to people. We view
Yeah.
kindness as being able to serve everybody except ourselves. We view kindness as, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter what I'm feeling, I'm gonna make sure they're good without pouring back into myself. So it's a matter of finding that balance because you can still be kind, you could be loving, you could be a person of service and things of that nature. However, if you are somebody who is not in that mental capacity or mindset to be able to do those services for those people, for whatever it may be, there's an unbalance within yourself. I always like to say that your mind, your mental, your brain is literally the engine of the body. I guess people would say the heart because without pumping the blood and whatnot. But your mind and your mental is really the engine of your body that keeps you going. And as much and I think the mentality aspect of things in terms of awareness, mental awareness, I think is growing, which is a great thing. But now it's a matter of how do we know how to take care of ourselves, put ourselves first, and being able to serve as we need to serve and grow towards our goals, grow towards our dreams, grow towards our passions to have that balance that we're looking for. So that's where, yeah, coming down to being like selfish and selfless, you have to understand there's really a balance of both. It's just understanding what is that balance for you. But I always like to tell people, and again, I speak from this personally because I used to be this person, is, the moment you actually say, no to these things you've probably been longing to say no to, not only, yes, there may be those people who have a different a different view of you, but in the end of the day, if somebody ever does, and this is more my encouragement, to people who are listening right now, is people who treat you a certain way because you have your own morals and standards weren't people that were really there for you in the first place. They were people who knew that they could leech onto you and use you for however much they could until they moved on to the next, if that makes sense. So that's why it's like, be very cautious, be very aware of the people that we're calling friends nowadays. And to give a perfect example, and I won't make this too long, but to give a perfect example, I am very I guess I'll say the word picky in terms of who I call a friend. Now, here's the thing: you can like people, but that doesn't mean they're your friends. There's people who like me, but I am not their friends. There are people that I like them and they like me. but we're not friends, right? And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. And I think in today's society, and I'm trying not to go too deep with this, because trust me, I can go deep with this, but I think in today's
I
society,
could too.
because a lot of people are looking for that belonging and they're looking for that safety net, they're looking for a place to call a circle, a community, things of that nature. We just try to make anything and everything work, right? Kind of going back to the point I made about how, people will work a job that they know deep down they hate, but they don't have the self-humility to say, I'm tired of this. Enough is enough. I'm going to work towards me and my goals now. They just kind of say, you know what? I'm going to make ends meet. I'm going to make the best of what I can, because day by day, and this is why I also say, and this is why I also say, what I say is, day by day, tomorrow's not promised, right? Tomorrow's not
Yeah.
promised. But the thing is, as you let time go on, eventually you get to your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100 if you see it. And then you start to look back at life like, man, all those opportunities I wish I executed. And so that's honestly even a larger portion of why I do what I do and why I speak upon what I speak upon. It's not to sound like this, like this rebel against like, oh, the government's bad and da da, but that's a whole nother
Right.
conversation. But
Yeah.
it's not the, pointing fingers at things of that nature. It's the fact of like, in a sense, and this is where some people may get a little bit triggered off of this, in a sense, the things that we work for, especially what doesn't fulfill us, is not going to matter in the end of the day, right? And I mean, and again, for the things that does not fulfill us, right? Life is not meant, especially with what we see on society, society norms, TV, whatever it may be. Life is not meant for you to just, hey, you just need to follow instructions, pay bills, boom, that's life. It's like, why can't you do that? But by also doing things that you love doing, being surrounded by people that love you and whatnot. But again, see this, I told you I could get pretty deep with it. But that's
Yeah.
I think that's really where the root of that all, comes from. So yeah, you gotta have that balance of being selfish and selfless. But a good example is like who you're calling a friend. Um,
Yeah.
Trust me, and I speak this from the heart as well. I was a person who was like begging, this was definitely when I was like younger, like probably like middle school, high school, begging like for people to like accept me, changing like my attitude, changing my ways in hopes that people will accept me. But the truth of the matter is, it's just like you need to be able to become the person that you desire to be. It's not something that happens overnight, but if you take the appropriate and right steps towards that way, the right people start to gravitate and be more attracted to you. And those are the people who are going to be able to help you along your journey. So that's why for me, when I call people friends, it's not like a hey friend, what like greeting type of thing. No, I don't do that. If you're my friend, it's because I truly mean it from my heart. But if you're just somebody I like, well, we're not friends. Or if it's like, well, they like me, I don't like them. Well, I'm not going to say you're my friend and say I like you just to make you feel better, not to hurt your feelings either. But like, it's suppressing these emotions that's not going to benefit you long term. And that's why I don't do it to them for that. So hopefully that all made sense there, bringing it kind of full circle. But yeah, you got to have that balance in the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And takeaways for me with what you just said is we mistake kindness with having to say yes to everybody, right? So, like, knowing what your boundaries are and knowing that saying no is fine. Like, I have this whole soapbox about is it nice or is it kind? Where, like, if somebody has something in their teeth, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't tell them, that's you being nice. But what the actual kind thing to do is to embarrass them for a moment and just let them know
Mm-hmm.
that they've got shit in their teeth, and to go fix it so that they can go about their day. Right. And so while that's the example, I think it still applies here because the kind thing also to do, not only for yourself, you've got to know, yes, like everybody you surround yourself with, that also is the person that you're becoming. So surround yourself with those people, be intentional about the people that are in your circle, pick people who are ahead of you in life or are something that you want to emulate so that you can learn and be surrounded by people with that good example. But understand that you're not obligated to be friends with every single person that crosses your path. I'm sure that everybody listening can relate to that and is thinking right now about somebody who was a bad influence on them
Yeah.
or somebody that they could not stand and they still stayed friends with anyway, and it totally slowed them down. And so I want everybody to make sure you remember that and what he just said about that. And sometimes that selfishness piece is actually what the kind piece is too. But you have to do it for yourself because otherwise, how do you move forward? You literally are the sum of the five people that you surround yourself with. And there can be other circles too. See, I have a soapbox about this as well.
Yeah.
Because I have circles of friends who, aren't entrepreneurs or aren't coaches. And, I have different circles for different things. And so you can get creative. It does not by any
Exactly.
means mean you have to cut everybody off, but also know that you don't have to feel that pressure just because somebody said, "Oh, yeah, we're friends." As you were sharing that piece about not calling people friends, like they may say I'm a friend, but we're not friends. I was thinking about it and I almost use the word friend as sparingly as like when I'm in a relationship and I tell someone I love them. I'm also almost like, am I ready for this? Am I ready for this kind of
Yeah,
commitment? Like,
yeah, that's a big stuff,
you
right?
know,
Yeah.
yeah, like I wait for a while. I want to make sure that we vibe. It's almost like dating, but for your friends,
It
you want to
is.
go out a few times and make sure we vibe, that we contribute to each other in some way before we use the F word and we we
Yeah,
friend up, right?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, so good.
yeah, no, I was just gonna just touch on that a little bit. It's just like that's the thing too with and the reason I'm bringing up that specific topic of like who you're calling your like friend is people some people may look at it as basic, but the thing about it is it goes back to a lot of what, especially for those who are listening, I've been tying a lot of what I've been saying to previous statements as well. So it goes back to when I said like environment, your environment is key, your environment. Because the thing about it is when you have certain people around you, you have people that you can tell certain things, that you can share certain things, that you can do certain things with. And the moment, trust is broken, that not the thing of what people don't understand is like if something were to happen between you and one person, oh, they broke your trust. It's not just like, oh, well, this just person just broke my trust on to the next. It actually starts to have you question all these thoughts within yourself of, you know, who can I trust? Who can I, all and whatnot. So that's why I say people need to be really, really, really cautious about who they're calling a friend. And for some reason, we live in a society where it's just like, everybody's our friend, or, hey, sure, we're this and that. But it's just like, what people have to understand is when you have, and this goes back to standards as well, when you have these standards, you have these morals, you have these, ground rules, you can even say, for yourself of like who can be around you, or the type of people to be around you that are more in a serving way for one another. Of course, you have to understand that's where even a huge fundamental of even empowerment can come from. And I don't mean empowerment of like you're better than all your friends, you're the leader in the clique. No, that's not what I mean. But what I mean by that is people really like respect upon people who are those people that say no, are those people that don't just take in everybody, those people that just call everybody a friend and whatnot, because those type of people who do are showing to the other people that, oh, this person could be like a pushover maybe at one point. Or, oh, this person could be something I could just hit up and use for whatever and only use them for this thing that's going to benefit me. So that's why there's this like whole loop, I guess you could say cycle of why people are wondering like, man, why did they treat me this way? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? And again, having those in place for yourself, I think is going to be a huge step towards building that self-empowerment for yourself as an individual. Because again, the right people will be attracted towards you, and the wrong people will be retracted away from you, if that's the right word as well. But
Yeah.
and again, and I hope that as I've been explaining and talking about this doesn't, give off the wrong idea of like, oh, you can't love people. And then I would say, go back to the last like 15 minutes to listen
Yeah.
again. Because you can love people, you can still be nice to people, you can be kind to people. And it's not like people have to be your friend for that. Like it could just be even a total stranger. You could be loving, you could be kind, and then and whatever that act of kindness and love that you portray upon that person may then be like more of a chain effect to the next person that they talk to, and then so on and so forth. So again, hopefully that does make sense, but that's really what I'm trying to like piece together as I'm saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody, whether they tracked with all of this or not, should definitely go back and listen because it's so. I need like sound effects on here so I can add like a mic drop because there were so many mic drops in there. So
I agree.
yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, no, so good. So good. And it really your circle is so important and that is going to be a huge catalyst for change. Even if, we go back to the very beginning of our conversation, if you're somebody who is struggling to speak out loud what you want the most, if you're sitting there and daydreaming, those are the people. If you get really present with yourself and with the people that are around you and you say, "You know what? This is the thing for me. This is the thing that I want the most in the entire world. Who do I know who already has it?
Mm,
And can I ask them how they got it? Could they help me get it?" Now that is a game changer. So really this all ties together so well. And that's how you bring people into your circle as well. You want to offer them something as well. You can't just be take, take, take. But
exactly.
of course, there's got to be a natural energy exchange there. But yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing too, especially about the take and whatnot. Again, this is why I again talk about having like standards and morals and whatnot, because you have to be careful for that. There's just people out there who just are inherently selfish entirely for themselves without worrying about pulling people up with them. They just want to know, hey, can these people push me up without thinking, can I pull them up with me? No, it's just, hey, how can you help me get up here? Okay, cool, thanks, bye. On to the next. So that's again, this is the time I would say, especially as we've been talking a little bit more about circle environment and friends. For those who are listening, I would actually even challenge them to, make a list. And here's where it can be challenging. This only works though. This only works if you do not second guess or hesitate. But for the people out there who are listening, what I would like for you to do, whether it's your phone and notes or a piece of paper or a pen, I want you to write out every person that is your friend or that you call a friend, and you don't have to second guess, how they feel about you, regardless whether or not they're actually using you for their benefit or not. But these are people that wholeheartedly you can rely on. There's proven track record that they've shown that you can rely on them, just like they can rely on you. But I want you to write out on a piece of paper all those names. But again, this only works if you don't hesitate on the names where you're like, Bob also did this. No, Bob is fine. No, Bob's out of the picture then. What I mean by out of the picture is he's not meeting those standards like you're telling yourself. Because the thing about it, and the trick of this, and it's a little bit more of a psychology play, is it's that quick mental pause. If you have a slight mental pause about someone, more than likely they're not the person that you have been telling yourself that they are to you. So that's why, and this is a cool exercise. I forgot who told me about this. This is like years and years ago. But you start to really see like, okay, these are the people who I know love me as I love them. And when you do this exercise, for some people, they have that set environment and they're just like, yeah, everybody here is good. But then for others, there's people who are like, go from I have 20 friends and they go to, cool, I have 5 people that I wrote down without even having a second guess or think about. Right. And that's really the trick behind it. You shouldn't even have to really think about it. You shouldn't have to even second guess about it. If those names just come naturally, boom, they pass. Right. But if those people are like, you got to think about it, I'm not saying like, oh, in your relationship. However, this is where you gotta build those morals and standards for yourself and see, are these people really serving me as I am serving them? So again, a quick little, mental exercise, but also exercise for you again to be vulnerable for yourself. So that's also something that just came into my mind. I feel like would be beneficial.
yeah, beautiful. Two really powerful calls to action. They're going to have to get to work after this episode, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see how that would be powerful. I'm going to have to do that myself. I haven't tried an exercise like that before. So I'm interested to see who comes up on my list.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the thing, and one last thing I'll say on this before we move forward is the one thing I do not want people to do is they look at their list and like, oh, I have nobody, right? Because then
Mm,
people are gonna now you're gonna try
mhm.
to pry people and convince yourself that, oh no, you can put this person out. The reason I say don't feel bad if there is nobody, it's not like, oh, you don't have friends, there's a problem. That was like the biggest thing back in like high school, middle school. People were so self-conscious about was like, do I have friends out of this? I'm gonna tell you right now, it's always quality over quantity. And if someone out there is just like, man, I don't know if I really have friends like I think I do, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's just that you just haven't came across your people yet. Simple as that. And a lot of people
Yeah.
think it's, oh, that's not true. It's really not. Because again, going back, see, this is like maybe like the third or fourth thing I've now tied back to the beginning of the podcast.
No, it's great.
When
I
I
love it.
said,
Keep going.
when I said that, when I was in high school, I prayed to God, I said, God, I pray that you would put me around people who were like me. That's because back then, if you asked me, Tavion, I make a list of your high school friends, it would be zero. It would be zero.
Mhm.
I had people I hung out with, but it would be zero. It really would have been. So I prayed about it. So then I'm trying to think 16, which so like yeah, like 5 or 6 years later, boom, I'm in Phoenix. Boom. I have the most friends I've ever had in my life. I've actually had more friends than I even thought I would have in my life, right? But all
Yeah.
that came from I know who I want to become. I'm going to continue to build and work upon it, and I know that everything's going to play out and come my way as need be. So that's also why I give that encouragement for those people out there, because that was definitely me when I wrote my list, writing in high school, even when I was in college and whatnot, was man, it was small. Well, college was a little bit more, but high school, especially, it was really zero. As much as I wanted to
Mhm.
tell myself back then, like I got this person, this person, this person, it was really zero. So I don't
Yeah.
say this to make it sound like it's just easy to say like, oh, I don't have a friend. I say this from personal experience as someone who was there and someone who is, you know, comfortable, but also, I'm fine with what it was then because one, we're in the present now, but I'm fine with where it was then because I knew where I had to start for myself, but I knew where it was going to take me long term. I didn't have the complete vision of how I was going to get there, but all you have to do is just trust the process as you continue to work on yourself and the rest does come. So that's my encouragement for people who are listening is don't get discouraged when you do this desk exercise because sooner or later those things come and they come in a lot more of an abundance than you may think.
Yeah. And I can remember places in my life too where my list would have been absolutely zero. And interestingly, it wasn't high school. It was like my late 20s when I had just gotten out of a breakup. So it's kind of trying to reinvent myself. And so I
Yeah,
was throwing myself into all these communities that I thought would be a good fit for me. And I found myself actually constantly being pushed out of those groups.
yeah,
And so that's also something that I want to add and contribute to this piece of the conversation is, sometimes it's not anything you're doing wrong necessarily. It's just maybe a group that's not for you. And to continue to force yourself into it is just prolonging the pain that goes with that because it sucks. Like I don't know if you've ever done that, Tavian, but I've been a part of groups where I'm just like, man, do all these people hate me? Like I don't
yeah,
understand
yeah,
what's happening. And I felt so like closed off and rejected. And I really fought the process of just removing myself from the group
yeah,
because I like to learn things the hard way. Um, but it took me like years to let go of those things fully. And I tried really hard over those years to make them like me, which was just another snowball in a negative way is like not remembering who I am and what I want and living for other people. So that's something too. Like if any of you listening are feeling like you're in a community right now where you're just like being shoved out constantly or people aren't telling you things like that's just a sign it's the wrong circle. And the quicker you can cut that off and let it go, the better.
yeah. And again, I definitely been there. Like high school was probably that for me. I would even say when I moved here to Phoenix, part of that was that case. Like, I mean, there were those people I was hanging out with, like, oh no, we do like each other. We are friends with one another. But again, saying this, previously, I came from somebody who had a bit of like social anxiety. I was always so used to questioning people's trust and whatnot. So a lot of like my trust towards people and my foundation upon standards or whatnot really derived here in Phoenix once I got around more people. But yeah, I mean, 100%. Yeah, that's where I was, at one point. But in the end of the day, everything and everybody comes as a lesson in the end of the day. And I think that people are so focused on, I gotta make this group work. Well, you can't force something to work for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is just what we need to remember as people. Don't try to force your way into something because all you're going to do is, and this might sound a little deep, but don't force your way into something because all you're doing is digging a deeper hole of regret down the road. Right. So
Mhm.
what I mean by that is, there may be people, and I've done this before, you try to force yourself into these groups, realize like, man, they really don't vibe with me like I wish they did. And you're trying your hardest to where it changes. But then guess what? All these other groups that are meant for you, or maybe your next lesson, are like they're coming, they're passing by. They're passing
Yep.
by. They're passing by. Because you're so
Hmm.
focused on trying to make this thing work. That's literally because it's not letting you in. It's like, hey, This isn't the door to open, on to the next. And this is whether it's not, that's not just for friend group, that's for opportunities, that's for, business, career, whatever it may be, relationships. Like if that door is shut, that door is closed, let it stay closed. If it's locked, right? If the key does not fit, don't try to jam and force it in, right? Move on to the next to open the door. And
Yeah.
if that one opens, great, step on in. And this is where you're meant to be, whether it's a season, whether it's like, hey, this is the rest of your life, whatever it may be. But my biggest thing, and this is I think this is another huge tip and advice towards building that self-empowerment upon yourself, is stop trying to force your way in on things that are already retracting away from you. So I would leave with even that for people as well to kind of like sit and resonate with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I learned that the hard way, and you know, and I remember thinking with the particular group that I'm thinking like, man, why can't I just let this go? Like, why can't I just fully remove myself and stop trying to, because I felt like I was just inserting myself into things. Like that's what I was like, well, I got to insert myself into this. And that is just a sign that you're so on the wrong path. So yeah, yeah, definitely just remove yourself because yeah, like you said, you're missing opportunities. And like my parents used to say, it's like fitting a square peg into a round hole. Have you ever
Yeah.
heard that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah. So I always think about that too. And it's like you can't force the process. You can't force yourself to fit things that aren't meant for you.
Yeah. So, and that's again, that's just what I leave with people. It's just like, why that, and I think that's where the term honestly like attraction even comes into play too.
Hmm.
It's just when you are yourself, you are continuously to work on your best self. The right people will see it. The right people will acknowledge it. The right people will come towards you, right? But trying to fit into what you're seeing online on social media, what so and so is saying, like don't like it's gonna be a huge disservice to you. I think for me, one of the biggest things I'm grateful for is being able to catch on to this much quicker than what honestly the average person will. Because I mean, I think there's people who even go upwards of even like, you could say 40s, 50s and whatnot, who are still doing this, or maybe they're just kind of like content with being, hey, I'm by myself doing my thing. But again, the whole purpose is to learn how to, not only build your self-empowerment, but fulfillment, not just through
Hmm.
within yourself, but also the people around you. So
Yes. Oh, so good. So good. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time left. I know there were some other things we were going to talk about. But I mean, guys, this is the man on a mission to impact a billion, and he clearly has some really great perspectives. So I want to know before we wrap up, Tavian, obviously where they can get a hold of you, but would you like to share anything about anything else that you do to kind of let people know how else they can, utilize you or connect with you other than your amazing empowerment fulfillment tactics?
yeah, absolutely. And before I get on to that, I want to thank you, Vanessa, for having me on your podcast.
Of course.
I
It's
had
been
an
amazing. Such a good
Yeah,
talk.
I had an amazing, amazing time being here. And honestly, it helped me even get back into the rudiment of, everything that not only do I stand for, believe in, but
Yeah.
this podcast and these questions you've been asking me have even helped me really take a self-reflection upon myself of where I was 2, 3, 4 years ago to where I am now. So again, once again, thank you so much for being, having me on this podcast.
Of course. Thanks for
I had
being
a really
here.
great time. And to everybody who's listening, I would always say, share this podcast out, to a friend, to a family member, to a coworker, because I think Vanessa is an absolutely terrific person and what she's doing here is absolutely amazing. So again, thank you so much. But yeah, so I mean, as far as what I do, so outside of yes, creating like, my motivational content and whatnot, there's actually several things in the works right now. So if anyone were to go to my Instagram, which is just, at Tavion Netters, which is just TavionNetters, you'll see I have like public interaction content where I'm actually like, creating, moving content with people just around public. So I'm proud to say I've actually brought that back. I have recorded content like that. I did that actually last weekend. And the last time I did that was like a year ago, because
Hmm.
2023, so much happened and it was me really like realigning myself. So now I'm bouncing back on that even with more ideas. So I'm working on more things like that, more daily tips on how to be your best self or what are those steps to go that route. But outside of that, yes, I do day trade as well. So a little background history of that. I think I've taught over like what 450 people now, I think to date, on how to day trade in the markets, which is anywhere from typically stocks, could be like Forex, crypto, things of that nature. So I taught about 450 plus students on how to do that. I actually have relaunched my membership for that. So if somebody is interested, if you're a great fit, especially if it's something good for you, feel free to
Yeah.
reach out and we can see if it's something that you'd want to do. Or you can also check out, I have a YouTube channel for that, which I also have linked in my Instagram. And then another thing I do is I do run a marketing agency. And to keep it short, typically what we do is we automate clients' social pages to help build lead flow and conversion rates. So taking cold leads into warm and hot leads, pre-qualifying leads before they book calls with people, because a lot of times people will be on calls with people that can't even afford them in the first place. So we solve that issue. Organic and paid advertising funnel systems, pretty much the whole nine yard, but in a more creative and unique way. So those are the two things that I focus on. Well, three things actually I focus on right now. So many more things I want to do, not only for the remainder of this year, but so on. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I would definitely say, yeah, Instagram at Tavion Netters is gonna be the best way to find me.
Awesome. Yeah. Make sure that you all go and follow him and check out all of his YouTube videos on trading. I'm going to have you back on so that we can talk about that kind of stuff too, because
Sure.
I think that that's stuff that everybody should know and definitely stuff that I would love to know about as well. So we'll definitely have you back on so we can dive deep into all of that. But we were just in such a good groove. I didn't want to switch gears on it. So Tavian, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. I just appreciate you taking the time to come and share for everybody this super big piece of you, but also sharing so many amazing tips that I know are going to help to shift everybody listening today.
Yeah, again, thank you so much to not only those that are again listening to this. I hope that obviously there was something that you would take away, even if it was one thing that was taken away. I hope it's something that can help benefit not only your life but others as well. Also, definitely do those call to actions, little homework assignments as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, once again, Vanessa, thank you again so much for having me on. Really had a great time. Really had a great time talking and speaking and really had me again self-reflect on not only how far I've come, but also so many things that's in the works, but also even making me think about, what more can I do from here? And that would be the last, I guess you could say, CTA call
Yeah.
that my coaching
One more
career.
for the road. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
I think that would be the last one I would give to somebody is, anytime, no matter what you're working towards, whether you are being a service to people, for people, one question to always ask yourself is, what more can I do? Right? Simple as
Mhm.
that. What more can I do? What more can I do for this? What more can I do for my business? What more can I do to get to XYZ goal? And that's how you're going to always find continued growth. And within continued, as you're on the journey for continued growth, there's always going to be lessons that you come across every single time. So there's definitely ups, there's definitely downs. But at the end of the day, your perception on what you do when you come across these obstacles is what's going to help propel you for success and self-empowerment.
Yeah. Ugh, so good. So good. All right, everybody. You've got three call to actions in here. You have to go back and listen to them, or maybe you wrote them down, but definitely make sure you tag us and let us know how everything went with that. And Tavian, again, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for that final mic drop. That was amazing. It's been a
Yeah, thank
pleasure
you.
having you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Rebel Rise podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and invite your friends to join us next week. This is your time. Now get out there and rise.